Hey everybody, it's Pax. As you may have seen on the Fantasy Flight Games website, I'm going to be hosting some previews on my channel on December 11th. So stay tuned for those, and I'll probably drop a few teasers a day or two before the video. But as for this hour and a half long monstrosity that you're looking at, last Friday night I had a disastrous game of horror in high gear with Fylion. It ended in about 15 minutes, and instead of cutting the whole night short, we sat around shooting the shit about a bunch of the Hemlock Vale spoilers we'd seen up to that point, and just about anything else that came up during those discussions. So here they are, presented with no further qualifiers. I hope you enjoy. So we just saw Ofuda from Drawn to the Flame.
Yeah.
Do you want to read off what the
Listen,
card does?
I can, sure. Ophida is a 2-cost Guardian asset. It has a willpower icon and the item, charm, and blessed. Is it blessed or blessed? Do we know?
I think that it's technically
I think it's
blessed.
blessed. It's just funny because the blessed blade is very definitely the blessed blade.
Yeah, who would say blessed blade?
I know. I know. That's why I think it's funny.
Yeah, okay.
Anyways, uses 1 charge. Replenish this charge the first time a blessed token is revealed at your location each round. Fast, choose a non-elite enemy at your location and spend 1 charge. That enemy loses alert, elusive, alert, aloof, elusive, and retaliate keywords until the end of the round. So my first serious thought is, I think it's interesting and probably good for the health of the game that Akachi's ability is worded as assets come in with 1 extra charge, not assets with uses charges have 1 higher. Because this would be really cool if her max charges was 2.
Yeah. I think this is the first, like, there's been a lot of cards, I don't want to say a lot. There's been some cards we've seen that have replenish that I feel like you kind of look at it and you're like, why is that replenishing? Like, why isn't that adding, just placing a charge? Why did they decide to do replenish? And it
Yeah.
makes sense for the first cards we saw with it, right? The physical training for hyper
Right.
awareness for.
Because those ones most felt like recurring credits in
Yeah, like
Netrunner,
from
I think
Netrunner.
is
That's right. Yes,
how
the
people
recurring
describe them.
credits. Yeah.
And because those were like totally non-tangible things, it totally made sense for that to be a like a mental supply of things that you were exhausting or burning through each round.
Mm-hmm.
And same with the tricolor talents from Edge.
Right. Yes. Yes, that's right. Yeah. But
Go
for
on.
this card, I feel like I get what Replenish is doing here. Because it's like it's a I don't want to say it's like a super niche effect. Like if you look at the effect, what it does, the enemy losing alert, aloof, elusive, and retaliate. And we've got the elusive definition now. Did you read that?
I did. It was fairly close to what we thought it would be.
Yeah, it's when the enemy attacks or is attacked. After that is done, it moves away to a location without any investigators, if there are any, and exhausts. Right? Something like that.
Yeah. Move to a connecting location with no investigators if possible.
Yeah.
It has to be ready too, which is
Yes,
just another great thing for
that's
Finn.
right. Yes, it has to be ready to do that as well. That's right. And that makes sense, right? Because it exhausts after doing it, and so it wouldn't just run away from you infinitely until you eventually kill it. But the loss of aloof and the loss of elusive, based on that definition, can both be understood in terms of action saved.
Yes.
And
This is saving you 1 action at base.
yeah, an engage action for aloof and a move action for elusive, depending on how much health the thing has, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the loss of alert and the loss of the retaliate keywords are saving you on skill value. Which is to say,
Yes.
earlier in the scenario we just played, which was the horror in high gear, where we just fucking absolutely got our skulls smashed in, the turn where I needed to commit, or you needed to commit to +4 against an enemy because pulling the Elder Thing would have absolutely killed us, right?
Yeah,
And the guy had
in a lot of
retaliate,
cases,
right?
I would turn off retaliate if I could, and do it at 3 up and just accept.
Yeah, except that you're going to miss.
Ironically, or in a neat contrast with the other effects here, I would accept the action loss if it was the only downside of failing the test.
Exactly.
I'm okay losing the action. I just don't want to lose the action and get hit.
Yeah. And so to kind of bring that all together back to the idea of why does replenishment exist, it seems reasonable to me for them to implement a way that this card has a limit on how many of those you can stockpile, right?
Yes.
Because it is a very limited ability, but it is an undeniably good ability for when its niche is discovered. And if you accumulated 4 charges between when you played it and when you got to use it, that would be really weird.
Yes.
And so I think it's interesting that the way that they're adding more things with like a low amount of charges and replenishment, or things that instead of just adding charges, replenish charges, so that there's like a, if you're not already using this, you're not getting the benefit from it. Use it or lose it kind of thing, right? And we see that with the parallel gym as well, where he needs to be using the charges on his abilities, on his assets, in order to replenish charges from his assets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also, shoutouts to the effect this card has on whippoorwills. 6 years later. Sorry, 7 years later. 7 years into the game, I'm still looking at cards and going, this helps with whippoorwills.
Yeah.
In particular, think of the case where you your partner has drawn a whippoorwill and you've drawn an enemy. So what you want your first action to be is engage the whippoorwill, so that your second action can be fight the whippoorwill, so that your third action can be fight the dangerous enemy. You can't do that because you're tied up. You'll take an attack of opportunity if you engage while an enemy is on you.
That's right.
Or you could just remove the aloof keyword and the whippoorwill auto-engages you. That's great.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's good stuff. I'm trying to think. I feel like Dunwich had a surprising amount of retaliate as well. Like, wasn't that 2/2/2 Thrall also having retaliate? Like, I know it's not a big deal, but like it's just occurring to me that like, hey, go play extracurricular activity with Sister Mary, and bring this along.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's not gonna screw you. It's gonna be fine.
Yeah, the 2/2/2 Thrall that spawns at the location with the most clues has retaliate.
Yeah. So I think this is a really cool card. I still think it looks like tomato soup in the background, though.
Interesting. See, I don't think of the background. I just think of the foreground. Because when I saw this card pop up, a voice from back when I was in high school and I watched Sailor Moon just came into my head. And I was just like, oh, yeah. Rin Pyo Tosha Kaijin Retsaizen. Those are just the words you say when you see that particular blessed piece of parchment. I'm like, what? I didn't know I still knew those. So, I think the Wicked Athame is cool because of the massive skill boost. And also, the replenishment is a neat effect.
Yeah.
Like, I just think that's nifty.
Yeah, no, it's just a nice adder to like a really bare bones weapon, right?
If you think about fighting 3 health enemies. You use a shriveling charge to hit them once
Yeah.
for 3 health, for 3 damage. Then you add as many curses as you have to, so that you'll hit with the Wicked of Thame.
Yeah.
And then you get to kill the enemy, and so you throw a charge back on shriveling.
Yeah.
And I think that is just very strong.
Yeah. I think it's cool how the card kind of mirrors Promise of Power in the way of what it's doing, right?
Yeah.
It's exchanging a significant boost to a single test for some curses, but also because it's an asset and because it's adding more curses per test, it's kind of like, well, let's throw a little kicker on there, right? This is taking up your hand slot, you know what I mean? You got to wait around for an enemy to use it. I can see that. I think it definitely has a little bit of an awkward thing with Apocalypse, like with what you just said. Like, you use Apocalypse, and then you add 3 curse tokens to the bag to finish them off. It's like, okay, well, if you had curse tokens before you used the Apocalypse, how often are you accidentally pulling a curse and then just killing it outright?
Okay, so here's the thing. I didn't think about that, because I don't run Apocalypse.
Yeah, no, me neither.
Apocalypse is a bad card.
Yeah, no, it's a very bad card. It's
so hard to get it to proc.
It has been a bad card, is what I would like to say.
So,
I'm not convinced it is necessarily a bad card any longer.
Here's what I think is interesting about a Cursed.
Okay.
When you commit a curse to a skill test, add up to 3 curses to the Chaos Bag. During the skill test, treat the modifier of each curse token revealed as 0. So, okay. On the face of it, that is a terrible, terrible card. Because it is a single wild icon. And so what? Like, are you just trying to beat the effects of curses in the bag? I don't really think that's very good. And certainly I wouldn't be adding curses to the bag just to treat them as 0 for this test. So that, like on its own, that's really bad.
Yeah.
But what Accursed telegraphs to me is, I don't know, a sense of, we recognize there aren't enough ways to get curses in the bag to make cards proc. Cards like Eye of Chaos or Armageddon or potential other future things that trigger when you draw a curse. Like, the reason I don't run those is because I hate the idea of, oh god, I hope I draw a curse on this test. I better hit that. Like, it just doesn't happen. So I'm hoping that this is more support for adding curses to the bag so that there can be more support for proccing off of curses.
That's fair. Personally,
I really hope. Otherwise, I don't understand why they printed this card.
Personally, I look at this card, these 2 cards, and I think to myself, I'm pretty sure that I can play a cursed Mystic deck now. Now, just with these 2 cards added to the existing stuff we have from Innsmouth, and my experience playing a cursed pairing of Parallel Agnes with Mandy, and how well that went, despite the fact that the bag consistently had 10 curses in it. And in that pairing, I didn't use the cursed spells because they seemed like shit.
Yeah.
I just took a Paradoxical Covenant and used Favor of the Sun to seal my Tempt Fate blesses. And that made it so that if I started getting a nasty curse chain, I could turn it into an auto success. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I used Blasphemous Covenant and Stygian Eye on Mandy so that she was always at like 9 intellect whenever she was trying anything. So getting a little run of curses, whatever. Right? To me, though, this signals that I can use those cards. And I think, going back to what I was saying about Apocalypse being awkward with the Wicked of Thame, I think that it also signals... it's weird. And this is the tension that I see with it, is, like I said, I use my Apocalypse first, and then I plan to follow it up with a Wicked of Thame. But if I already have curses in the bag, and I draw a curse, my option is to kill the guy by dealing the 1 extra damage, and then hitting him for 2, or replenishing the charge placing a charge on Apocalypse. And now, if I defeat him with Wicked of Fame...
by the way, is the card. I couldn't find it.
What was it?
Armageddon.
Oh, yeah,
Armageddon.
Card. Yeah. And now it's like, oh shit, I put a charge back on Armageddon. Or I'm either killing the guy and not getting my charge from my Wicked of Fame, or I'm putting a charge back on Armageddon. And if I don't have 2 charges missing, then the replenish won't go off, right? So it seems to me like the way to get around that is to have more things that can replenish charges or offerings in that package.
Yeah.
And to be aggressively using your cursed spells so that they're always...
So that you don't feel awful when you can replenish a charge and you can't.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that these cards together are signaling that, like you said, that they recognize that there just wasn't really enough generation. But I think I'm a little more confident that I could, despite the downsides of something like a curse, where it's actually not doing much at all on its own, I think that I could use it in a package to pretty good effect, like right now. Just because I've played a bit with Mystic Curse and I know how good Olive and having your favors can be. It's easier to fix getting curses than it seems like it should be. And then they also happen to show up far more often than maybe you necessarily need them to. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my thoughts on those two. I think they're a good signal, and I'm excited to use both of them. Did you see Grift? You were busy this
I saw
week,
Grift.
right?
I did manage to see Grift.
I really like Grift.
Yeah.
Some people did the math where they're like, hey, on a 5 agility rogue, this is like approximately an emergency cache, right? But you have to have an enemy in play. But I'm a heck of a lot more interested in, again, kind of like with Accursed, the mix and match of things all pointing to one another, right?
Yeah.
It's not something you test natively. It's something you have a bunch of things that you put into.
I think this card reminds me of people looking at the action economy in the first days of the game. Like, evaluating literally every card based on the action economy.
Yeah, right. Lab assistant costs 5 actions to play, and you only get 2 actions back for it. So why would you ever
things
play
like
lab
that.
assistant?
Yeah, and like we managed to move away from that generally, but and obviously it's not a useless thing for evaluating cards. You just have to keep it in mind.
Mm-hmm.
But what so many of those cards those cards that looked inefficient ended up being were, as soon as there was something else to do with the results of it, it was a great deal. Burglary on the surface in Skids in the core set is terrible. As soon as you put it in a Rex deck, it's ridiculous, especially with higher ed.
Yeah, it was certainly ridiculous before it was taboo.
So I look at Grift and I say, okay, if I'm just trying to get money out of this, there are better things to do. But if I am a rogue who is desperately trying anywhere I can to succeed at tests, I wait for it around I don't have an enemy. So I'm not already doing like a high power agility test. And I can commit my manual dexterity to this test. I can commit my nimble to this test. I can proc my lucky cigarette cases on this test. Or my lucky cigarette case 3 on this test. Where I'm expecting, I've just thrown in a ton of icons. So I'm expecting to pass by 4 or something. Like, there's a lot you can do here. I think the biggest trap you could fall into is committing so hard that you are guaranteeing yourself the 6 resources.
Yep.
You just kind of have to go. Yeah, I'm okay getting. Sometimes I only get 3 or 4,
Right.
based on the bag pull. But the way you can evaluate that is going, okay, even if I drew the worst token in the bag on this test, I'm committing 2 more agility icons to get 2 more resources. What's better, having these cards in hand or guaranteeing myself those 2 resources if I draw the worst token? And I think if you're asking yourself that question, you can still make a good call.
Yeah.
You do have to, like all my favorite green cards, you have to be prepared for this card to not perform at maximum.
Yeah. No, I totally.
If the card gives its whole payout, that's great, and you are going to do that a lot of the time, and you can't take it as a failing when it doesn't do that.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think that the combo. See, and I'm hesitant to call it a combo because, to me, Grift is a signal towards more of something I would call synergy, right? Where, hey, this is going in a deck where I'm already intending to have a lot of good over success stuff, right? There is going to be a lot of cards that all have like vectors pointing at one another saying, yeah, I work here and yeah, I work here. And it's a big mesh of lines all interconnecting. It is not, 6 cards where I need each of them in my hand at the exact same time. And if I don't have them all, it doesn't do anything. This is to me, like, this is like you said, triggering my lucky cigarette case, getting a draw off of a manual dexterity, but like it's more than that too. It's hey, my Gregory Gry is in play.
Yeah.
Right? So hey, now I'm gonna get 9 resources. Or I only need to succeed by 3 in order to get 6. Right?
Yeah.
Or in someone like Winifred where you're wanting to commit all the time. I think that Grift is a perfectly good reason to if you've ever cut Opportunist from Winifred, Grift is a real good time to put it back in. Because you're going to be succeeding by 3 if you've committed 2 cards. And same with Watch This, right? Like, yeah, sure, it's going to be monumental when you fail, but you're only going to fail 1/17 of the time.
Yeah.
Right?
You just remember those times.
Yeah, you remember those times terribly, but all the rest of the times that you got, whatever, 12 resources because you did Gregory Gry and Watch This with a manual dexterity into it to be certain, right? Like, I think it kind of does that really interestingly. I also like that this is illicit and that you could technically turn it fast with a fence.
Yeah.
I'm seeing...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's great for Finn because of that illicit word.
Yeah.
Also, it has tricks, so Rita can take it.
Yes.
That's for you, Brian.
Yeah. Oh, God, we appreciate Brian. But yeah, no, but seriously, Rita can take this, and Rita can get a ridiculous skill value innately. Like, once you've got your track shoes and Peter Sylvester in play, I wouldn't even commit to this with it. I'd just be like, yeah, okay. I'll test this.
7.
Yeah, run it at 7. Yeah.
Worst case, you get the -4 and you're still getting any cash out of it.
Yeah. An e-cash while you're engaged with someone. Did you need the money? Well.
Of course. I didn't catch that. It's a parlay.
Yeah, it's a parlay. So you have to have
it
for the
Contessa. That's...
Oh, yeah, super good for what's her name again?
Right.
Alessandra?
Yeah. Right, you do need an enemy at your location.
Yeah.
So it doesn't work quite as well for what I wanted, which is like, oh, I haven't done anything around enemies this turn, so I've got a free action and I haven't done a ridiculous succeed by test.
No, but it does still...
Evasion,
I mean, in a 4-player game, they don't... I said a minute ago, but they had to be engaged with you. They don't have to be engaged with you, they just have to be at your location. So in a 4-player game, on a round you can't grift, you can probably be advancing the game state, right?
Yeah.
But even on a round you can't grift, technically, if you're, say you're Finn, you kicking the Hornet's Nest, and then you evade the enemy with your free action, you get your pickpocketing value, and then you grift them. And you have made a silly amount of money, gathered a clue, drawn a bunch of cards. Now there's an enemy standing around for someone to kill or to just leave behind because you pulled an enemy out of the encounter deck, right? Like whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting. The amount of stuff that can go into that. That's cool. Plus, anything that like, I think I've said this before. Anything that's like, hey, I could replace an emergency cache with this, and also has icons, is almost necessarily a decent card. Like any amount of icons. I don't care. The amount of times early in this game's life that I was playing a scenario and I was like, I have 2 e-caches in hand that I don't even fucking need to play, and I need icons now. I don't find myself running into that half as often nowadays, and it's a benefit that I think goes a little understated.
Yeah.
Did you see Occult Reliquary?
I did.
How do you feel about that one?
I felt like an idiot. I spent a long time thinking about accessories that are blessed or cursed.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized, no, if I just need to play another accessory, I will just take Relic Hunter.
That's right.
So I felt like an idiot for trying to think of that.
So the only time that's really relevant, I think, is, say you're playing Underworld support and you can only take 1 Relic Hunter. Well, this can get you to your 3rd accessory slot.
Yes.
But
although if I'm playing Underworld support, I'm not going to have enough accessories to...
Yeah, that's just it. But yeah, you're right. If you're playing a build that needs 4 accessory slots with one of them being blessed or cursed, then hats off, right? By all means. But
yeah,
that seems a bit excessive to me.
Yeah, so I think the more interesting thing is the hand slot.
I think agree.
Or the arcane slot.
The arcane slot's also interesting, but I think the hand slot is the most interesting because there's not a lot of ways to get additional hand slots in this game.
Yeah.
And a lot of the classes don't tend to need additional arcane slots outside of Mystic. Like,
the other thing is, like, I can take Bandolier or I can take Sign Magic. I have to find those. I do not have to find Occult Reliquary.
That's right. Yeah.
So I think that's pretty cool. So Blessed Blade is a card I would love to run, except I hate the idea of it taking up my hand slot because the opportunity cost of a Blessed Blade in your hand is having something in your other hands to actually do damage.
Right, yes.
I would love to do turns that are fight with the Blessed Blade first and exhaust it, and
then just use something else to keep going.
And then just use something else if I didn't get the extra damage.
Yeah.
But I can't do that because I don't have the hand slots for it.
Right. Yeah. And that makes sense.
This lets me do that.
Yeah. This lets you combo Eye of the Djinn with a lot more things, which I think is interesting. Right? Like our hand slots and our arcane slots hold a lot of actions, right?
I forgot about that guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Testing things, starting off at 5 skill value if you know what I mean? And then readying it if you draw a bless.
I don't want to spend my hand slot on that normally, but
if you've got an extra hand slot, you sure will.
Yeah. Enchanted Bow is blessed and uses both hand and arcane slots.
And that's really cool because double hand on the blessed bow, the enchanted bow usually kills it for me. Like,
yeah,
if I've got 2 hands dedicated to a weapon, I need to be doing something else, especially
So
one that exhausts on use, right?
here's the thing. Enchanted Bow is a card that has several things wrong with it. This removes one of the downsides. I need more incentive to play it, but like I will say that Occult Reliquary puts it in a spot where I feel like I would try it.
Yeah, no,
I would try it. I would not expect it to work, but I'd be okay trying it. Whereas right now, yeah, exhausting your double hand slot is like I can't make this work.
Yeah,
There's just no way.
yeah.
There's probably a Mystic build where you don't even have it you don't even use Occult Reliquary for the hand slot with a Blessed Bow. You say, okay, the bow's taking my hand slot, but I just want all my arcane slots if I
Yeah. No, that makes sense. You use this holds your blessed arcane slot, then you have your other 2 arcane slots for the stuff you normally want to do. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I like that.
I also think there's value in if you're just running a ton of blessed or cursed assets. I think there's a lot of value in just having this around and you see what you get to put down an extra of this game.
Right, yeah. You run a little more.
That's probably not the goal of the card, but it makes me okay taking it as early XP before the rest of my build's done because I'm like, yeah, I have a limitation on my play removed.
Right. And I think charisma gets picked up like that a lot, where it's like, hey, I like to have 4 allies in my deck because, if one dies, I want to have a little bit more soak. But only 2 of an ally, sometimes you don't see enough of them, right? So you pick up charisma and you're like, there, now I can just play both when I see them.
I don't know how well this works with Holy Spear, just because Holy Spear is enough of a thing on its own.
I mean, I think there's value in saying, sure, I can have my Holy Spear and then also hold a survival knife. You know what I mean?
Also hold a survival knife or a flashlight or something.
Yeah. Like, it doesn't need to be anything crazy, right? Like, the Holy Spear is a really good weapon, and having a hand slot free for anything else you might want to do is pretty good. I saw someone mention using this to make sure you've got space for your Spirit of Humanities, right? If you're playing a deck that has Spirit of Humanity, your arcane slots are basically both occupied, and you can't really do anything else with them. And the fact that this lets you hold one of them without using up a slot is really cool.
Precious Memento.
Yeah, the Precious Mementos. Yeah, one of them is blessed and one of them is cursed, right?
Yeah, so that's neat.
Yeah, and then there's a bunch of other things that are blessed and cursed.
An
like there's the grizzly totem that's cursed and blessed.
So the thing about those is again you could just take Relic Hunter to have more in play.
Yeah.
Or you could take the Occult Reliquary first, and that way it can give you the Relic Hunter slot. Or if you're drawing the other stuff, you haven't wasted the 3 XP on Relic Hunter because you can't get a second accessory. Because we have all had this scenario where right out the gate you spend 3 XP on Relic Hunter, and then 3 scenarios go by and you don't get 2 accessories, and you're like, well,
yeah, what the hell is going on?
There are 2 other very cool uses, I think, for this. Rite of Sanctification, if you're competing on your arcane slots at all.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense.
And that one, that's a big one because when you play that, your arcane slot is locked for 5 rounds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one makes sense. That one makes a lot of sense.
It's not like a Shriveling where, you can throw down a Shriveling and burn through it in 3 rounds. And then you want to place over it. Like, Rite of Sanctification goes in, your team is side-eyeing you if you have to discard it for any reason.
That's right.
So I'd be happy to have the extra space for that and also play my other spells. And similarly, I know people don't like this card, but I actually think Book of Psalms is really good. I think it's a strong way to add blesses to the bag so that you can do your other stuff.
It's just slow, that's all.
It's healing horror, which is neat. Which is fine, except you're right, it's slow. And I don't want to take a slow card in my hand slot in Guardian when I need my hand slots to use for killing things.
Mm-hmm.
So sure, give me another hand where I can hold that and beat still have two hands open for weapons.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense.
I had a very fun Tommy deck that was all about Bless Generation. It was comboed with my friend's Mateo deck, where he was just eating blesses as fast as I could put them in the bag, and I was putting them in really fast. Dude, Spirit of Humanity on Red Glove, man.
Oh, okay.
Everyone wins.
Yeah.
Everyone wins.
Yeah.
It's a party at the table.
Yeah.
Right. So I wanted to put Book of Psalms in that deck, but I couldn't because I was trying to run Becky, or I was running two-handed weapons for the whole deck because of Becky.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't run Book of Psalms. I would love to slot it in, but I was like, I need my hands open for Becky.
Yeah.
3 XP, I could have put Book of Psalms in. We got the Patrice's violin art. I'm very happy about that. There's no text on this card. It's all about Patrice's violin art.
That's fair.
It's not Patrice's violin art. It's that playmat art. That's the one.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is probably one of the better art pieces in the game.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's no text on this card. It's just...
And I mean...
although I will point out that it's a trick, so Rita can take it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Push to the limit. Choose a weapon or tool asset in your discard pile. Resolve an action ability on that asset, ignoring all costs, including its action cost. After the effect resolves, shuffle the chosen asset into your deck. This does not provoke attacks of opportunity. Oh, okay. So the power of this card is not the ability to resolve an action ability on the asset, including its cost.
Yeah, it's to see it again.
The power is to put it back into your deck. Yes, I would like to shuffle my old Keyring 3 back into my deck
again.
I think that is cool.
Yeah. I think push to the limit is a very good card. Once again, invoking the Spirit of Brian. This is a tactic, and so Mark can take it.
Yes.
And I think that's actually really good for Mark. Like this seems nuts for Mark to me.
Yeah.
Especially
because he's drawing that when it shuffles in.
Oh yeah. And like if you've ever played solo Mark, flashlight is your fucking lifeblood, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have a flashlight, you're not getting clues for a bit. Maybe that's different nowadays since the interrogation taboo removed the humanoid requirement. But being able to get an extra use of a weapon or, like I said, a flashlight, from the discard pile after you've removed it, and then shuffling it back in means that you just get a ton more value out of that. And these are decent icons for it. It's reasonably costed. Ignoring the activate cost, I don't know if that... I would read this as, for instance, if you have a Sledgehammer 4 in your discard pile, being able to do a big, huge
That
thing.
is a really cool side effect of what I think is the intended effect of the card.
Yeah.
Which is that playing it costs an action.
Yeah, playing it costs an action, so you don't have to use the action on the card, right?
Yeah.
That seems to be what it's more trying to do, but, I mean, ignoring all costs, not just ignoring this cost, and it has to say all costs because it's a weapon, and so if you do a firearm, it can't spend an ammo otherwise, right?
Yeah. I think there's a different way you could have worded the card that was, you make it fast, and then it resolves an ability ignoring all costs except its action costs, so you still have to pay that, but let someone have fun with Sledgehammer 4.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So I think Push to the Limit is a cool card. And I also think it's a really cool card in a world where we're getting Pitchfork, because I don't particularly like Pitchfork. I think it's not.
I think it's overcosted.
I think it's overcosted, and there's something about the numbers on it between the play cost, the attack bonus, the combat bonus, and the damage, and the number of actions required to actually ever use it. There's something in the math of that just doesn't sit well with me. But that being said, I do appreciate that you would be able to play it from your discard pile using Push to the Limit as a 3 damage, 2 costs thing.
Yeah.
If it found its way into your discard pile. And it's easy to find its way into your discard pile.
Because you're committing it because it's too expensive to play.
Because it's too expensive to play, that's right. If there was an easier way to like discard it from play while it's on the location,
yeah,
like if we got a card that let you just be like, fuck this goes into the trash now, but you lose control of the pitchfork, so you can't even sacrifice it to like a Crypt Chill.
Yeah.
While it's attached.
I think Push to the Limit works very, very well with a core set card called the Baseball Bat.
Yep, that's right.
Which I love. It's very swingy.
Yes.
And it has screwed me a few times, but I do love Baseball Bat.
Yep. No, I think that Push to the Limit's a really good reason to start running Baseball Bat again, because you've got insurance in hand for when it breaks on your first swing against a 4 health enemy, right?
Yeah, the sucky part of Baseball Bat isn't, oh, I just killed something and the bat broke. It's, oh, I just killed something, or I just started fighting something and the bat broke, and now I have no weapon and I have an enemy engaged with me.
Yeah.
And this lets you squeeze out another attack.
Yeah, I think that's
is very good.
And
you can potentially get it back. So,
yeah.
Then the question, do you run this in Yorick? Do you bother?
I think that Yorick would run this. I think I'd run this in a short supply Yorick.
I'd run this in a lot of people's short supply decks. This feels weird to run in Yorick because you can get the assets back into play already.
I think maybe this is my solo and 2-player bias speaking, where I'm like, yeah, but sometimes you don't have enemies, and sometimes I'm using up, I like guns so much. Hey, I've already used all my point 14 Derringer ammo, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever, or point 18.
Yeah, I think there's space in a York. And good observation. There is absolutely a space for this in short supply decks.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. No, it's that's absolutely true. There's totally space for this in short supply decks because, like, I don't know. I haven't played a lot of short supply myself. I think the main. I'm trying to think. I've done a couple standalones with it. I did some standalone play, and then I played that Min Forced Learning deck when we did Return to TCU. And I mean, it's a good card, right? No matter how you cut it, it's a pretty good card.
Yeah.
And so whether this gets discarded and your other cards are still in your deck, or whether you've discarded your other cards and this goes into your hand and you get a use of them for free and then they go back into your deck, it's like whatever. Kind of just nullifying a lot of that downside while still being able to get some stuff out of it.
I don't really want to talk about the masks.
No, you don't want to talk about the masks?
They do their stuff. They're neat. As someone who is going to buy the campaign box, or the investigator box, and then the campaign box 2 months later, if I try to play the masks, I'm probably... I don't know. Like, I'm reluctant to take these in my first run of the campaign because I'm worried that I will get campaign rewards that are better masks. And then I'll be like, well, that's a waste of these deck slots, but...
Yeah, I'm a little concerned that the only thing that I dislike about the masks is that upon reading them I was like, am I building 29 card decks from now on? Like, is this what this is?
Oh, you think they're that good?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
These two are, at least.
These two are, yeah.
These two are. I don't know if the rest of them are. The rest of them might be dog shit, right?
They're easy enough to trigger.
Yeah, I think that, engaging an enemy is something you already want to be doing with as a guardian, right? Whether it's pulling enemies or engaging them before you go. So these are easy enough to get. And frankly, a bunch of overpowers without the draw on a stick is pretty good.
Yeah.
Plus twos go a long way. And the same is true for the Sparrow Mask, right? Taking a damage or a horror is not a huge ask and is something that is going to happen periodically. So, use a charge and then go into the Mythos phase.
Yeah, you're
right?
right. Like, what are you going to do? Not run this in Calvin?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, what are you gonna do? Not run this at anyone, right?
Yeah,
I'm Rita. Yeah, I'd fucking love to have +2 willpower on tap, right?
yeah,
I'm well, fuck. I'm any guardian. I'd love to have +2 combat on tap, right?
yeah,
Like, it's always been, to me at least, it's always a problem with guardian where it's like, yeah, I gotta commit an icon here or there. It's like, okay, I play a 1 cost card, and now every time I draw an enemy, I get
yeah,
a +2, a blank overpower in my hand, basically,
yeah.
right? You know what I mean? Like that's. I think that these cards are very good. I don't know that they're so good that you'd ever include 2.
No, not
I
when the
think
other
that
one comes at a
I
cost
think
of
that
10.
if you
For
read,
reasons you would only include one of these in your deck, check out the so far 2-part series at Derby K's excellent blog, Ancient Evil.
that's right. I was just about to say, did you read that blog post from Derby
I
K?
do. I think it's very good.
But I think that these are a very good example of a card that it's like, hey, here's all the reasons you run 2-ofs, and here's the downsides of running 2-ofs, and here's some of the upsides of running 1-ofs. This fits like every single thing I can think of where it's like, it's a great card,
Yeah.
but I don't need 2 of it, and my deck can be a lot better if that card slot goes to something else, right? That's just the way I see this one. But I do think that at least for these two, unless I'm deliberately choosing not to, I'm going to be playing with 29 card decks for a while, because they're just good cards. I think people undervalue raw stat bonuses, which is a crazy thing to say in our world of static boosts and how often people rely on static boosts.
Yeah.
But I think that skill cards that provide you a massive skill boost are good in and of themselves. Not necessarily better than something else that does something else, but good. And this is enough of it on a stick, on an asset. That's going to add up, right?
Yeah. And it doesn't even take up a slot.
Yeah, it takes up your non-existent mask slot.
Yeah.
Don't go play Carnival. Whatever.
Fine. Don't go play someone's custom Majora's Mask campaign.
Did you see Devil?
Yeah, I keep thinking of you.
Yeah, I really want to edit a red eye into the center of this guy.
I think Devil's neat.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a surprisingly simple card.
Devil is actually, I actually really really like the design of Devil because it's like, it's one of these cards that can do really really cool things, and also screw up if you play it wrong.
Yeah,
Like, it,
that's fair.
1 in 20 times, very rarely, Devil will proc in ways you could not have expected. And everyone will feel a little bad because you felt like you screwed your team.
Yeah.
But, like, whatever. I think most of the time it goes wrong. It will go wrong because you did it wrong, and you should have been better. And you can actually just say, skill issue. But I am okay messing that up for all the times that I also think you can do something really cool with Devil.
Yeah. I think Devil lands at a really nice XP and resource point.
Yes.
I know there's a lot of cards in this game where I think to myself, if this were more experience and a lower cost, I would play this more. And this is a good example of a card that lands at a real nice spot on the cost and the resource, like the resource cost and the XP cost, for me to be like, yeah, this is going to see play. And
yeah, so
I think it's interesting that it's like kind of a heal effect, like in a really roundabout way. It's kind of a heal.
Yeah, in a vacuum, if no one else is at your location, it is saving you 1 health.
Yeah.
wherever the damage comes from, be it on you or external sources that are doing damage to you,
That's right.
you are healing 3. You are ending up with 3 fewer damage on you than you would have. And then you are adding 2 damage to yourself because you are always at Devil's location when it blows up. Unless it gets some sort of summoned servitor attachment.
That's right. Or, in some cases, you set up a cancel. I've had worse. Delayed the inevitable.
I guess. I have a hard time counting that because, like...
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, right.
Something else, but yeah.
I mean, you know, you're Tommy, and you tossed that 2 damage onto your leather coat, and now you just got paid out $5, right? Like whatever.
Yeah. But
that's still 2 damage that's being taken up, right? Like that's
So then, doing 2 damage to everything at your location, to each enemy in particular, is just a really cool effect, and there are so many ways that you can make it go off. There are so many attacks of opportunity you can take to kill an enemy. Yeah, I think that's really cool. And I think 1 cost is the appropriate cost for something that is basically 1 soak and 2 damage.
Yeah. I think
because it's also taking your ally slot.
Yeah, no,
if it wasn't the ally slot, I would pay more for it. But.
Yeah. I'm really interested to try this out in Yorick. I think that replaying him for 1 resource after killing a guy is really good. You set yourself up with a little bit of a ticking time bomb, but like realistically, if it fails to fire and you can just walk off by yourself, then you heal 1.
Yeah.
But also, say I'm Yorick and I've got a bandage. And that's math starts to work out very differently, right? I think Yorick... I mean, obviously Yorick and Tommy are really good for this.
Yeah.
But I even think that any survivor trying to do enemy management is going to like this a little bit, because historically Survivor struggles a little bit with like bursting damage out on a turn, and this can set you up for that.
I would run this in Wendy Adams.
You'd run this in Wendy? Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
The biggest pain point there really is the ally slot.
Yeah, the ally slot sucks, but it's a way for her to actually poke out some damage on enemies.
Yeah.
And there are many ways she can make that work out.
Usually her enemy management is so high stakes, right? Like,
yeah,
if you miss a backstab or you fuck up a waylay turn where you just never got to play it because you couldn't pull that off, or whatever.
Obviously, this works well with Resourceful.
I like the
Chance
idea
Encounter
of it.
0 is playable here.
Yeah, that's true.
You have to really be ready to take 3 damage, which I'm not going to just be like, oh yeah, it's easy to take 3 damage. But if you can figure out a way to take that damage, Chance Encounter 0 is actually great.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Alternatively, if you somehow know you're about to take some damage, you could just use Chance Encounter 0 to get Devil back into play and do something, and then it leaves play. I don't know what that would be. That would be like, I'm about to walk into this location that does 2 damage for walking in. Let me just play Devil from my discard pile, which is, we're talking really niche here. But
yeah, that starts to be kind of weird, but I mean, it is what it is.
Right? I kind of am just like, what is any circumstance at all where I would play Chance Encounter 0?
I mean, Chance Encounter 0 is a really weird card, right? Like, you use Chance Encounter 0 when you're like a solo survivor and you have a limited card pool, so you've got a Mysterious Raven, right? Like,
or if you're Min and you're running a Miskatonic army type thing.
Yeah. No, that's fair too.
Because of all their on-enter effects. But it's ugh.
I like the idea of Devil with both Rita and Silas for that thing I was mentioning earlier, right? They both have 9 health, so they've got plenty of room to play around with this. And both of them occasionally struggle to just output enough damage in a turn to be the primary enemy management guy. So they do evades occasionally, and so you leave enemies on the board. And then you set up a cool devil thing, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to be really cool. I think that's neat.
Also, I just love the theme of this card. Like, I feel like Devil isn't a card like your friend Dr. Milan, that, you know, he's the guy you've called up on the phone for every weird thing you've ever found for the last decade.
Right. Yeah.
Devil is like, I don't know, I was wandering around and this goat showed up. And he's here, and I feel better, and everything's fine. And, so he does that, does he?
Yeah. He keeps chewing on my clothes, but I have a good feeling about when something bad goes wrong, it'll be okay. And then he gores everyone and leaves. Right? Like,
that's just fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alright, control variable. Yeah, seems good.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's, like, obviously you actually need to be drawing the curses to make it work, though.
An investigator reveals a token during a skill test at your location.
Yeah, that'll just happen. It's not quite as tricky as who's our friend with the dog, the rogue asset?
Tristan.
It's not quite as tricky as Tristan. And I find Tristan's easy enough to get into play. So, like, this will just go off, and whenever it goes off, it's a clue, and it's tempo positive.
That's just
look, it's another fast card for Seekers to get clues a little too easily.
Yeah. It's really easy to look at this and say to yourself, this is working a hunch for one less that I don't get to control as well. And to which I can only respond, okay. So it's like basically a cheaper working a hunch then. Because you're just going to use it when it shows up. You're not going to save it for when it's a really tricky little thing. You're not going to need to save it for when it's a really tricky little thing. Because you're already going to have that clue.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. It's a good card.
Yeah.
In a vacuum, I think it would be a really good card. It's a little bit annoying because it's like another really good Seeker level 0 card.
Yeah, I can see that. Like, I mean...
And I'm not too much on the Seekers are too good train, but, like, why is it always Seekers who get the fast, something normal happened, discover a clue? Sorry, discover a clue or draw cards. Like,
yeah. It's, there's definitely, like, a thing where there's a few too many fast effects.
Yeah.
If this costed 0, I'd be pissed. The fact that it costs 1, I'm like, yeah.
So, honestly, you know, this is an argument for playing with a limited card pool sometimes. I think in the context of you're a new player to Arkham Horror the card game, so you've got the core set and the Dunwich Legacy, because it was the first one and everyone told you to start there.
Yep.
And, this new Hemlock Vale box came out. It's new, I want to check that out. I think this is a perfectly reasonable effect to have in that balance.
Yeah. And then you go, hey, Innsmouth has these Blessed and Cursed things and this is still super reasonable to have.
Yeah. I the only reason I would get mad about control variable is when you look at it in the context of the entire card pool. You go, ugh. So that's just another reason that I think everyone should try just doing a little bit of card pool limiting when they play campaigns, especially if you find yourself taking the same non-taboo or the same cards over and over now that you're on the taboo list. Just just be like, you know what? I want to build a deck around this card, and I want to combo it with this card, so I'll take the 2 cycles those are from, and that's just all I'm going to use.
Yeah,
and just run with that and see what happens. Because I think if you try to go for the 30 best cards you can for the deck you're trying to do, you will just see the same things over and over.
Yeah.
And that's fine, except it means, at this point, 7 years after the game came out, if Link pulled the Master Sword out as a child in Ocarina of Time on the day the core set was released, he is now waking up That's how long this game has been out. Like, there are just cards at level 0 especially that I never play and never will play because they are not meeting a baseline of ability. They are just not good enough to ever run. And maybe if I start limiting my card pool more, I get to play some of those cards. I feel like I'm not, or I feel like I have a good reason to take them.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny. I could say I'm going to put this card that I've never played before in, even though I think it's bad, and then I would feel grumpy every time I saw that card. or I could say I'm doing a deck building challenge, and now it's a challenge that I've given myself. So that's a fun thing, and now I'm happy to do that. That's just how brains work.
I mean, it's funny you say that. It kind of reminds me of when I was testing fighting lessons, but instead that I was actually really positive on fighting lessons, but I also had it in the back of my mind that it was just not going to fucking work the way I wanted it to. Because I had a ton of arguments with people about fighting lessons where I was like, nah, man, in the right pairing, I can see this being really good. Like, surprisingly good.
Yeah, it's not that fighting lessons is a bad card at all. It's that if you want consistency, if you want a higher performing deck all the time,
then you're just
not going to make that cut.
Yeah, but when I played it, when I finally did get to play it, and I was like, who am I playing? Who am I going to make this work with? It was like, oh, I need a guy that holds his own and does some combat, and a guy that holds his own and does some evade, and they both kind of might be able to use that. It's like Roland and Finn. That is the easiest two-player pairing where the guys are going to walk away from each other. And Roland committed fighting lessons to Finn plenty of times from across the map.
Yeah.
And it made sense, you know?
And he's got it for himself if he wants.
And he's got it for himself if he just needs icons. And Guardians need icons sometimes, right? Which is why I like that wolf mask so much. So, it's one of those things, right? Where, like, you kind of have to set yourself up to want to play it. To make yourself play it. And, like, I wanted to play fighting lessons, so I played it, and I found that restriction easy. I didn't have to use a limited card pool. But, like, I don't want to play, I'll pay you back.
Yeah.
This card looks stupid. But, what was it that you had said about the pitchfork? Where it was, like, some of the cards in the game, they don't necessarily have to be, like, a really strong card. They just need to seem like there's something that you could do funny in the world. Or something that would be in the world that we're playing in.
I'll pay you back as that.
And I'll pay you back as that, right? But this is not a card I would play in earnest to try and win a campaign. And I'm certainly not out here trying to lose campaigns. So I don't know what's going on with this. This is a goofy card.
It's fun. It's interactive.
It's fun and it's interactive. You're right.
It's the kind of card that I would play. Like, you know, I play with people of all skill levels.
Yeah.
I play with people who are just starting out who are going to play Knight of the Zealot once and that's it. I play with one of my friends that I play with. The Venn diagram of a deck he builds and the next taboo list is near a circle. So, like, you know, if I'm playing in a really strong group, I'll pay you back is the kind of card where I might just be like, hey, I feel like the group's going to win. I feel like I don't have to give 100% in my deck. I want to mess around with this card. I want to see what happens. I don't feel a need to be super performing right now, so let's see if we get a cool story out of this.
Right.
But I wouldn't do that with new players, because when I'm playing with new players, I feel, hey, this is social contract stuff. When I play with new players, I feel this overwhelming obligation to make sure everyone's going to have a fun time.
Mm.
And that often means being like, my deck's got to just work, and
My
I
deck
am
has
happy
to be
like,
able to pick up any slack that is happening at the table.
yeah,
At a moment's
i-
notice.
if I don't have to pick up the slack, I can like pull my punch a bit and not swing too hard against the game, so that everyone else still feels like they're having a fun time. But I don't want to have any weak spots in my deck, because if something really bad happens, I got to be able to pull us out of it. So I would never run I'll pay you back in those cases. So, but I would also, for some of those players, I would give them I'll pay you back and be like, if you think this is going to be fun, you just do that.
Yeah.
You just have fun with this card, because you know what? Sometimes I look at this game way too mechanically, and I'm way too focused on the winning thing to see what fun thing could happen.
Mm-hmm.
And new players have this thing where they look at the game and they're seeing it in a different way, and it's like that thing about the imagination of a child.
Yes.
Like they will just think of something that never crossed your mind, and they will do some really cool effect. Is it optimal? No. Is it fun? Yeah. Yeah, it's good.
I also think that this art of Preston and Bob interacting is just really good.
Yeah.
I think there should be more player cards with art like this, where it's just like, yeah, these characters all coexist in a world together, and they do go on these ridiculous adventures, right? And the absurdity of their characters is a thing that they have to deal with, right? Like a card art of Amanda and Rita studying together or something like that late at night.
I love that one.
Would be awesome, right? I think it wasn't even necessarily characters that we know, but like the Predator or Prey, stuff like that. Is just fun, and this is a fun too, because we get to see Preston not in his little, himbo playboy smug look, but like a fed up handing money over to this door to door salesman that he's unfortunately been shackled with.
All right, here's my big complaint about I'll pay you back.
What's that?
There's too much text on it.
Yeah, this needs to have flavor text, man.
This really needs flavor text. Like, one of my favorite parts about extensive research, which, as you said, is the other great example of the investigators just interacting, is that flavor text. Nothing in here either. How many do we have left? See the wall behind you? Like, I want the flavor text on this card.
Yeah.
I really do. What is it? I don't know. I'm not a copywriter. That's why I need. Side note, while we're on about flavor text, why in Accursed is Calvin in a golem pose when he has a quote from a poem in Lord of the Rings?
Not all who wander are lost. Is there a...
That's Aragorn's poem.
Yes.
So I'm just going to be grumpy about that forever.
There's no card called Accursed in the Lord of the Rings. He is kind of in a golem pose, and I don't know if you saw the full art, or at least the higher res art, like clicked on it on the subreddit, but like he has a single tear coming from his eye.
Oh yeah, I saw someone mention.
Yeah. It's kind of a shame to me that we've got another card that someone has someone's art explicitly on it that they can't take. But I'm happy with Calvin not taking this card because I don't think he gives a shit about it.
Sorry, you don't play by the house rule that investigators all have the additional deck building options of cards with their art on them?
Unfortunately, no. I can't bring myself to do stuff like that.
I know. I know. The rules say I can't, so I don't.
So I don't.
But
Yeah, it sucks. It sucks. And just like briefly before I turn the recording off, doubles.
doubles.
I think that doubles are going to be super interesting, specifically because if you look at wrong place, right time, and you ask yourself, if this wasn't a double and did not take a second action to play, how would the numbers on this look for it to feel fair? And the answer
would need
is...
to cost. Oh, go ahead. You have an answer.
Well, no, the answer would be moving up to 2.5 damage and or horror from your investigator to assets controlled by investigators at your location, right? Like, so, like, it just does not divide evenly.
Yes, I see.
And it gives them more granularity with which to decide to balance stuff. And you mentioned Netrunner earlier. Did you play much Netrunner?
No. Most of what I know about Netrunner is from Peter's blog post about what's it called? I think it's called Fast Advancing the Doom Track, but it's a basic primer on action efficiency.
Yeah, gotcha.
It's where he explains the joke about biotic labor being a terrible card, and then tells the joke anyways.
Yes.
That's most of what I know about Netrunner.
Yeah. Okay.
Like,
so,
I know the basic format, but I don't know
the thing that I
cards.
was going to say was that in Netrunner, ice is something you deal with as the runner and the corp. And ice protects your servers, and the runner plays icebreakers, and when they make runs on your servers, they have to boost the strength of their icebreaker to match the strength of the ice and have that icebreaker match the correct type. So, like, it has to be a fractor to break a barrier or something. But the point is, there was a card printed at one point called David, and it was a David and Goliath, and the art was a sling with a stone in it. And it came into play with 3 counters, and it said, spend a counter and break a subroutine on an ice with 5 or higher strength, right? And because of that, and because of a bunch of really strong ice leading up to it that were all kind of like centered at like 4 strength, it kind of made this weird gate where like 4 strength was the highest something could possibly be before someone recurring David could just bust right through it.
Right.
And it put that really weird limit there on how strong an ice can be before it gets to this threshold. Mm-hmm. And I always wished that everything had a little bit more space between it. And David was like 7 strength and up. And all of these like 4 strength ice were a bit more varied between like 4 to 5 to 6. And so...
yeah.
I think that introducing the doubles now, after, like you mentioned, 7 years of the game, is a good way for them to be able to find interesting things that you can do with cards that have a really weird balancing point.
Yeah.
With their bonus, with the amount of actions it takes to do a thing, right?
Yeah, because if it wasn't doubled and it still costs 0 resources... You're right. You can't do 2.5.
Yeah, and so then you have to change the cost, and then
3, and 2 feels way too low.
Yeah, 2's not defeating anything.
3 feels way too high.
Yeah.
So you're right. Then you're changing the resource cost.
Yeah, or the XP cost, right? Or the icons, or whatever, right? And so I think it's interesting the way that you need to take another look at cards when they have doubles. Another thing that's like slightly different, doubles were in Netrunner as well. And there was an asymmetry between the corporation and the runner, where the corporation had 3 actions per turn and the runner had 4 actions per turn.
Right.
So a double was a little more expensive for a corp.
Yeah.
than it was a runner, and I think that that's something that to be considered here, where yes, it's a strong effect, but you get one more action for your turn. So, are you sure you need to spend 2 actions this turn moving a bunch of damage and horror around?
Yeah.
Right? Um, Moving on from wrong place, right time as like a double thing. Even microscope, it's not a double event; it's a double activate,
Hmm.
right? And it lets them, this can spend 2 evidence to discover 2 additional clues, so you can get 3 clues for 2 actions, which ultimately isn't that much more efficient than some other options, right? Like,
Yeah.
say I spend my 3 actions on my turn doing a microscope investigate and a normal investigate. Well, if I get all of them, that's 4 clues. If I do that with a fingerprint kit, right? If I spend all 3 of
Hmm.
my actions doing a fingerprint kit and 2 investigates, I can get 4 clues, right? It's not that different. But there's still a difference to consider where it's not just 2 actions, it's 2 consecutive actions, right?
Hmm.
And so it breaks up your turn into it feels kind of silly to say this, where it's like, you have 3 actions and you're using 2 of them on one thing and one of them on another thing. It kind of splits your turn in half, but asymmetrically in
Yeah.
half.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested to see where they go with that, because I think it opens up a lot of room to see variations on things we've already seen, but with, like I said, a bit more
Hmm.
granularity in exactly what you're getting from it, to make sure that we're not overstepping on anything on existing cards, right?
But still having reasonable effects.
But still having reasonable and
Yeah.
interesting effects, and even, I mean, in the case of wrong place, right time, there's not much that does that, right?
Yeah.
And so taking a novel effect and then also balancing it in a way, having an additional vector through which to balance it, and making it an interesting amount of effect per card is very
Hmm.
cool.
Yeah. I like that. I like wrong place, right time. Uh, Microscope, I just don't like the effect. But here's the cool thing about microscope is Daryl can take it.
Yeah, yeah. You can just
Yeah.
hey, did you not find the Hawkeye willpower bonus and sanity bonus and intellect bonus that useful? Sure, take microscopes instead. Whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
And here's what I also think is really fun about microscope. Um, I can use my Eldritch Sophist to put a charge on your microscope right after you play it, and then you can't put evidence on it.
you fucking rat. Jesus Christ. Get out of here. Actually, though, you know what? Back to your point of this being an evidence battery for Daryl, and comparing it to Hawkeye. Remember the campaign we did where you were Kaimani and I was Daryl?
Yeah, that was fun.
And
Yeah,
yeah, no, it was a really good campaign. But I remember one of the things I struggled with was clue compression, right?
yeah,
Look what I found was not particularly good with Daryl. I picked up my sharp
yeah,
visions and I picked up my upgraded deductions, and then I was like, I'm just taking so many fucking basic investigates. And
yeah.
that's how I get my
Shadow Light
clues.
didn't exist at the time.
And I think that the Hawkeye folding camera swapping out for a microscope, in the world where I have a glut of evidence, being
Yeah,
able to turn that evidence into clue compression, even if it's not that much clue compression, is definitely a good alternative to only
yeah,
being able to use it for static bonuses or difficulty reduction.
yeah,
So that's definitely a situation where this is good. And I mean, also it's science, and so it's very strong in Kate, right? Like, whatever, fine.
yeah,
It does her laboratory thing.
yeah.
Oh, also this is a tool so that Kaimani can technically use it? That's kind of funny.
Oh. Oh.
Never really thought about
Oh,
that.
that's good.
Yeah, and that actually... with that +3 to investigate,
What does that put them at, 6?
it puts them at... Is it 6 or is it 5?
5.
It's 5. But I mean 5 plus a few commits. That I mean for 3
Yeah.
clues. And after an enemy at your location is successfully evaded or defeated, that's happening plenty.
Oh no, microscope exhausts, so you can't abuse it.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yes, no, it does exhaust. Yeah, okay.
Do you know? I mean, it has to. It has to. My very first thought when I saw the card was, well, what if you're playing Kaimani with this? Oh, no.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah. No, that would be silly.
Because my very second thought was, hey, Finn evades an enemy and then kills it. That's 2.
Oh, actually, Finn's kind of cute.
And Finn can actually take it.
Yeah, Finn can take it, and it is like again that +3 to a. Yeah, I mean, I guess another thing again, unlike Fingerprint Kit, if you succeed, you may spend up to 2 evidence to discover that many additional clues. You don't even have to.
So the only reason I wouldn't start with this at level 0 instead of lockpick 0 is the opportunity cost of your 5 off classes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That's the only reason. I'm not just like, okay, I'm running this instead of lockpick 0 forever.
Yeah. I think this would be an interesting thing to try on him, though, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool.
I mean, here's the last thing about this. I don't think the value in this is necessarily in action compression. I think the value is you double investigate, you spend an action, you spend an evidence, and you're investigating a difficult location once for 2 clues.
Yes. You're getting a +3 to your investigate for one test.
So it's not about action compression as much as it's about test compression.
Yeah.
And I like to see them revisit that space, because I have always thought that Kukri was a cool card, but actively bad. But the idea of taking fewer tests to get the same result is an enticing one.
Yeah.
And I want to see more things like this that'll do that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense to me. All right. Let's cut it there, I think.
Let's cut it there.
I can turn that into a video.
You can turn that into a video, a quick discussion. You can edit things from that as needed. Yeah, cool.
Do you want to say goodbye?
No.
Okay, fair.
No.